My name's Dru Bex, all the way from Toronto, Canada. I'm a rapper, spit bars for the Lord. All right, so I was blessed enough to just sign to Role Model Records. They're a local record label from Toronto, but they're actually doing a lot of things internationally, and it's really a blessing because I've been seeing these guys from afar and just admiring what they're doing. And you know, we've had a good relationship for a while now, so it just made sense. So I thank God for that. So we're both in Toronto, like I said, and I just I go to the same church, well, a different location, but the same church as Shola, who is the CEO for Role Model Records, and we started kind of just getting to know each other. And then for South by Southwest, we decided to ride up together because we're both coming from the city, and so we decided to just go up together to or go down actually together to Texas, 30-hour drive. So 30 hours on the road, you really get to know somebody, and then spending all our time there just talking and building, and we realized that we have a lot of goals in common and just kind of on the same wavelength, and that kind of got the conversation started. Got back to Toronto. I actually went to go see him about something else that was going on in the city, and then we just kind of started talking about the idea of me connecting with those guys, and it just organically grew into what it is. And then the offer was made, and I took some time, prayed and fasted about it, and I just knew it was right. I'm always dropping singles. I'm always working on stuff. I got like 5 singles in the works. No project as of yet. I just signed to the label, so I'm gonna have a meeting with them to kind of see where we want to go project-wise. But as far as songs, I'm always in the studio. I'm on Chopé's new EP, and I'm always working on new material. So you'll hear something from Dru Bex. Yeah. I'm on Chopé's new EP coming out August 26th called Chopé with the E, and that's coming out August 26th, like I said. Okay, every time somebody asks me what my name means or where it comes from, actually, it's I gotta try and find a way to. I actually have to come up with a way to make the story concise, because my birth name is actually Dru Beckles, but my mother, the unfortunate part of this story is my mother passed away when I was 7 years old, and she's the one that gave me that name. She was a single mom, and I went to go live with my dad, and he gave me his name, and it's not Dru Beckles, it's something else. And as growing up, I kept that name as my government name, but when I became an artist, I wanted to kind of just honor my mother and just incorporate my birth name into my artist name. So that's where, nothing too fancy, that's where it comes from. Dru Bex. It's actually my real name, but it's Dru. I spelt it differently because my real name is spelled French. I don't know why, but it's D-R-E-A-U, and I just made it simple and made it D-R-U. No, I don't speak French at all.
Okay.
I'm coming from Canada, but I don't speak I took French class, so I understand a little bit of French, but I don't speak French. One language, English. I just released a project actually late last year called Nowhere to Now Here. It's available on Rapzilla. It's available on my website, which is www.Dru.com. You can find it there for free download. It's got some really dope features. Alex Faith is on there. Social Club is on there. It's got production by Wit. It's got production by T. Wyla. It's got production by my homie Q from Toronto. Look out for that guy. And but more importantly, it's got some really introspective tracks on there that I really just poured myself into. I get really personal on that record, so on those records. So just look out for that. Download that. Actually, it's out. It's been out for a while. And as far as new music, I got new music on the way. So look out for me. You can follow me on Twitter at Dru Bex. That's at DRUBEX, one word. Yeah, so look out for me. So I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada. My mother was a single mother, and she raised me in the Seventh-day Adventist church, actually. But I was young and I didn't really get it. When I was 7 years old, she passed away in a car accident, and there was actually a family war that took place. The two different sides of my families were fighting for me, but I ended up going with my dad's side. And when I went to go live with my dad and my stepmother, they didn't go to church, so I was raised in church when I was young, but after that I wasn't really in church. Yeah, so there was a lot of things that I experienced as a child growing up. You know, there was a lot of fighting in my family, and I ended up living with my grandparents. And when I got to that house, they said, "You got to go to church." So I started going to church with my grandmother. I didn't really like it. I was just going there because I was being forced to go there. So I would go to church on Sundays, but I would spend all my other time out in the streets, just kind of hanging out with the dudes in the neighborhood, getting into all kind of trouble. Smoked a lot, drank a lot, just did a lot of things. You know, some violence and all that. And it was around the age of, I'd say 17, when one day I was hanging out with my homie, and he said that previously to that I had a chain stolen, and there was a big group of guys that I used to hang out with, and my other homie told me that he saw one of the other guys from the group with the chain. So I went to get my chain back, and went with a bat and everything, ready to, you know, get my chain back however I got to get it back. And those guys basically all attacked me, and you know, they were really trying to hurt me, but my grandmother happened to be driving by. It's like something out of a movie, but she happened to be driving by right at that moment when they were about to do whatever they were going to do to me. And I hopped in the car, and I said, where are you taking me? She said, "We're going to church." And I'm like, "I'm not going to church, I'm getting my chain back." And she goes, "You're going to church." So it was a Wednesday evening, and it was actually a Bible study. And we went to church, and I'm sitting in the back of the church, and the pastor's talking, and he's just like, he was just talking about, you know, when all your friends forsake you, Christ will never forsake you. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, that's what I'm going through at this moment. So I accepted the Lord at age 17, and you know, I've had my ups and downs since then. Pretty much the same week that I accepted the Lord, I had my first big test where my friend who was actually living with me at the time, we got into a little argument, and he stabbed me right here, right in this vein here, and blood everywhere. And that was my first true test, because my first instinct was I gotta kill this guy, but you know, I just felt the peace of the Lord come on me, and I knew that it was real. And I've never looked back since then. I've had my ups and downs. I struggled like every other Christian, but never looked back.